Alright, let's go ahead and get this rolling here. Sorry for no video last week. I started a new job, and now I am a tired lad, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and get into it. I also am very forgetful. You know, that's how it goes. Alright, so I briefly looked at the Dota buff for these games. It seemed like we kind of threw this game. So there's a lot to be, I think there's a lot to be learned from losses, especially throws, because they generally indicate a lot of ways you can improve, specifically with how you play the map, where you make your moves to. This Riki pick seems a little odd to me. It's Find versus Mars, I guess, but it's generally just a pretty weak hero, and pretty much most of the meta carries counter it, and mids. So that's the only main concern I have. They immediately pick Spectre, good lane versus Sand King, good carry matchup versus Riki. So it's already a little concerning draft wise. I picked the Hoodwink because it has the break for Spectre and the break for Mars. Good with Sand King. So right now I'm looking at the draft and I'm thinking that we are the way you do damage in fights is a little awkward, or the way you take fights, right? You can find pickoffs okay. Your team fight is pretty meh though, and you're pretty much solely single target focused outside of maybe Epicenter. So Sand King, Hoodwink, Riki are all reliant on killing a single hero from the get-go. Whereas, you look at the other team, they have some single target, but they also have team fight. So I'd say, as a whole, their lineup is definitely more well-rounded, which leads to being able to make more kinds of plays, even from behind. And they last pick Dragon Knight. We pick another hero we don't see a lot of in the Necro. I guess it's a fine lane versus Dragon Knight. Not a hero you see a whole lot. So it's again very all in on single target. So if you aren't able to kill a target in a stun from Sand King, the fights I feel like would be very awkward, as you don't really have the most natural ways to take team fights outside of that. So we roll. There is something to be said, of course, for setting up successful side lanes and snowballing the game from there. And I think that's generally one of the better places to play Dota games from. So setting yourself up to have a successful laning stage is generally, I'd say, the first step to winning games most of the time. We run 4 top here. Just looking for first blood, probably.
30 seconds and counting.
Blightstone start on Hoodwink seems alright. No kill's gonna happen though, so we're just gonna run. Okay, so we're deciding to put the Oracle versus the Warlock. Alright, that's fine with me. Quick look over at items. So we have Blight Oov on Riki, so we know we want to be aggressive in this bottom lane. We can definitely punish them if they ever are out of position. Mid lane, definitely would be a little strange to not go bottle in this current meta. I know Necro doesn't generally need it, but it's just so goddamn good So a lot. I guess if you want to relate it to a hero, it'd be like an Invoker-esque hero that goes double null earn a lot of times. And top lane, let's say these are relatively standard. I do recommend right now, just in this current meta, a lot of cores and supports start stick because of the inherent value that you get out of it, out of most lanes, and then the very natural buildup it has from the branches that you can start within lane as well. So like on a hero like Riki, you go for this Wraith Band, when instead I see a lot of carries substitute this Wraith Band for just ferrying a wand out. And you get like a wand, and then you get like a casual Band of Elven Skin. And you build that Band of Elven Skin into treads eventually, but it substitutes as the Wraith Band in the laning stage. And then the stick kind of just has value across the game board for every hero. So this gets pushed in, and then we go to cut this, which seems okay. We're going to hold the wave here, which is all right. We know we've blocked this camp, which is very good to know. We should know that this camp is blocked, by the way, because we didn't block it, or we didn't see them body block it, and we ran past it at the 30-minute mark. So we should know this is blocked, so we should ideally be sending a sentry out at some point to unblock this. I feel like we're pretty happy with playing a slight farm trade. We can pressure the Spectre with slightly more levels, but I do think you might be a little too passive, Cryptic, on your using of spells. I know you want to save your Q for the Warlock stuff, but if you can find the chance to force Warlock to use his own mana, it's a greater trade-off than the other way around. Because your spells can offer kill threat along with the Sand King now. So if the Spectre is ever caught lacking, this Warlock dot can only do so much. So just keep an eye out for that. I think I said this in the last video I made, but it is pretty much mandatory to have access to this big camp anytime you are in the offlane. So one of you two needs to be ideally communicating that this offlane is available, or that this offlane pull is available, because you can do so many things with it. You can force a 1v1 for the carry versus offlaner if you want to do something like that. You can just get the pull off if you want, and you can. It's just especially when you have a Sand King. If you have a hero that's going to naturally push in this wave, pretty much the last thing you would ever want is for a Spectre to just be free farming under their tower. So the only way you can ever pressure the Spectre is if he's out here where the Sand King can stun, you guys can click him, you can chase him down. So in order to do that, you need the big camp. And we see here in this lane, oh, nice little sidestep. They're going on you. Unfortunate. What happens here? So you go to stack this, or maybe pull this, but I think in hindsight this is never really going to happen. First off, Earth Spirit you see the Earth Spirit, and he has roll, so you will pretty much never be able to do this. All of the trades you want to be able to take in this bottom lane, if you think about it, how your heroes synergize, you pretty much always have to be going on the same target together at the same time. So get the Blight, get the Blight, plus the Bushwhack, plus the Oov, plus the Tricks of the Trade and Blink Strikes on one target will generally lead to a lot of damage, if not a kill. But when they're the ones catching you out, it's pretty much worst case scenario, because both of your heroes are pretty squishy by nature. So if they're allowed to use spells on you for free, or with poor trade-off, it will generally lead to a bad trade. So that's one of those things you need to think about ideally before the game, on how do you play the lane? Do you want to play a 1v1? Do you just want to use your spells together? Sometimes you can use your spells, push the lane, pull, There's a lot of different options. I won't lay them all out here in this video, but feel free to ask me about some of those in Discord or something. But in the end, they wind up catching you out lacking in a way. In mid, we're kind of doing fine. Again, Dragon Knight as a hero doesn't really lose most matchups, so I think it's generally poor design in the draft to pick a hero that will win the lane, quote unquote, versus DK, because he's just such a not lose lane kind of hero. But TK is extremely happy in this lane. All things said and done, our Sand King is a very happy camper. Up here. And thus, you keep pulling, you keep playing. Oh, okay. So at this point, the Oracle feels relatively useless up here. You get a kill, but if TK is just going to go for like a Vanguard or kind of like a Ring of Health here, I think looks amazing. You buy a Ring of Health, and then you just keep cutting, and you play for your own game. While you're not pressuring the Spectre, you're playing for your own game and your own timings. This seems ideal. And if your offlaner wants to play that kind of style, having your support up here isn't always necessary. I feel like a lot of times, as a whole, players and of the skill level, not just you guys, but you get really, really wrapped up in, I can't leave my core. I can't leave my core. I have to stay near him, or otherwise they're going to die, or they're going to make a mistake. But really, it's actually, a lot of ways, you should be treating it as the opposite, where if you communicate with your Sand King, are you able to solo? Are you just going to cut? These things go a long way, because if your Sand King is just going to cut and he has a Ring of Health, he should never really die, unless Earth Spirit maybe TPs. So as the Oracle, you can kind of communicate this with your Sand King and be like, all right, you know he's going to be able to solo. This frees you up to kind of go mid, go bottom, protect your Necro maybe. You know, you have so many options available. So that's something that you can consciously be thinking about as the game progresses. And the same goes for Hoodwink, right? When you have the carry offlane matchup preferred, I'd say Riki is one of the better matchups versus Mars, especially because you're not super scared of his level 6. You don't generally die to it. So as the Hoodwink, you shouldn't at a certain point feel super tied to playing bottom. Maybe you want to kill, maybe you want to stay bottom, that's completely fine, that's your choice, but leaving options open to making those sorts of rotations and plays. Alright, so we're kind of just harassing him here, nothing big. But I noticed that we're overall very static, which is something that I feel is generally from a lack of forethought into the grander scheme of a game. And it's really hard to immediately be good at something like that. But if you ever feel like you're not really doing much in a lane, that's generally a sign that you could be doing something more efficient, or something that applies more pressure, gets you a kill somewhere else. So when you ever feel like you're not doing anything, you should be taking that time to think about your other potential options on the map. This is fine. We have a Cardi Wave. I like this, so you stayed up here and pressure the Spectre. We have a Cardi Wave. We don't want to let this guy sit up here for free, is what we're saying. We trade our lives. Dive a little bit too deep there. That's cool. I think pressuring top is one idea. I also think pressuring mid with your Necro is an idea. You have Scythe and you have 2 Magic Nukers into this Dragon Knight. So it's a realistic possibility with this 5-minute Cardi for your Necro and your 2 supports to come here, place like a ward down over here somewhere, and you just make this DK miserable. Because your Riki's not really going to die. Your Sand King's not really going to die. If you're applying pressure mid, it's going to force the supports near mid as well, which frees up your cores even more in the side lanes. That's kind of a grander scheme thinking process, but it's very, very important because that is a possible move, and it doesn't really seem like it was considered from what I'm watching. So they TP the Dragon Knight down here with Dragon Form. They seem to catch Yop, but Yop doesn't die. Nice positioning here from Cryptic. And we find a kill. Find a Scythe kill. Dragon Form wasted. Not too shabby. Alright, so they've used Dragon Form. They've used Arena. They don't really have any cooldowns. We use Scythe, but Scythe isn't really necessary to forcing things around Necro. So maybe we look to pressure somewhere with these important cooldowns being down. DK once again is just opting to play this farm game. That's fine. Sand King generally wants to be a little greedier. Instead, we go back bottom. Is there an objective for us bottom? Is it super easy for us to get this tower? Probably not. And I'd say you generally feel this in most games when you're on the Radiant, where getting this tower is pretty tough, I'd say, especially looking at your heroes. So you're not getting this tower. So the supports being down here, the only thing that could possibly mean is that you want to get kills. But kills down here mean much? Not really, right? Generally, you want to use kills as a segue into forcing objectives, putting pressure on the map, making moves. Getting a kill down here doesn't really do anything. Maybe it gives your Riki a little bit more farm, makes him snowball a little bit more, but in the grand scheme of the game, it isn't really working towards an objective. Which is where the support staying bottom seems really awkward to me. Because you have this Riki, and if Riki wants to move around, maybe he goes top. So maybe he doesn't tie himself into playing this bottom lane. Instead, he TP's top, pressures the Spectre out of here. All of a sudden, you take this top tower. They don't have Dragon Form, so they're not able to trade towers. Something like that could be considered. Instead, we're kind of just sitting around. And yeah, we're getting an net worth advantage, but it's overall kind of awkward, I have to say. And we stay bottom, we force a fight. Which winds up going well because we're strong, and our Riki's really strong, and we notice that. And our Necro's really strong. I think it is unrealistic, generally speaking, against better opponents. Well, I guess higher skill, as you were to get better and improve at the game. I'd say it's unrealistic for the enemies to force this move, knowing the game state. You know, they have a Spectre, they have a DK without Dragon Form, like, they feel pretty awkward. They don't have Rock. So if you're expecting them to run a bunch of heroes at this Riki, I'd say that's an unrealistic statement. Yes, they do it, so it winds up maybe working out in your favor, but in a future game, I don't necessarily think this would be a play that happens. And this fight goes up going really well because you have a bunch of sustain, they have no damage, you get a bunch of kills. So again, we're winning fights. However, I feel like the fight location is kind of awkward. And I feel like part of that is on you, Yop, if you do wind up watching this, because you feel tied to playing bottom when at a certain point you should feel like you want to run around, or if you feel really strong, you should be able to exert your strong pressure in a more pressured lane, or a easier to pressure lane. So right, if you were to go top or mid, right, mostly top. Mid's kind of weird. So if you go top, this with the +1, the Spectre's like, oh shit, I gotta get out of here. You get this tower, you camp your Necro mid or something. He's standing here. You put supports near him. Like you can open the map up really wide without tying yourselves down to playing bottom. Once again, we have 10-minute cardio waves. This is a very important timing that we've talked about in a lot of videos. Sorry, I'm getting pinged. Okay. Moving onward. Alright, so 10-minute carts. You can see your Necro, like, he's like, yeah, I have a cart. I want to pressure this. And Oracle is here, which I love. You smoked and got a deep ward down. This is perfect. We know we have this carded. They missed the roll. They can't really kill our Necro. We recognize this. We're forcing this objective around our strong hero. We TP in some heroes late. Oh. Chef's kiss. Beautiful. And now you can keep the ball rolling, right? This is one of those things where you take this tower mid. They used a bunch of ultimates. They're a very ultimate reliant team. I would just run top. And that's exactly what it looks like we do here. We're just going to walk top here. Maybe we don't need to bring 5 heroes. 5 heroes does seem like a bit of an overcommitment, but we recognize that we can also get this objective. Perfect. Love to see this. And now we're going to invade into their jungle. We're going to take some stacks. Supernatural progression here. And this is one of those things in the game where you feel so natural, right? You feel comfortable doing this because it's a natural flow of the game. It's a natural progression. And that's kind of the state that you want to try and achieve as you move through a lot of Dota games, right? As you move through a Dota game, you want the game to progress naturally. You want it to feel easy in ways, right? Where, you know, the moves are kind of obvious. All right, so we've kind of been 5-manning a lot, but that's fine. We got a lot of objectives. We cleared out through top. We got this jungle. And I see the circle drawn to walk into their triangle. Which is kind of awkward, I'd say. I mean, I get that we feel really strong. But I like this decision more. You're going to just come put your... Okay. TP from Necro. I'd say once again, though, getting drawn into playing bot isn't needed in this game. So while you do get this kill on Mars, it is a little awkward, right? You're letting your top lane and mid lane get pushed in for a lot of these moves. I'd say, general rule of thumb, you should prioritize lanes being in a good place before going for these kills. And it's getting a kill as long as you don't over-rotate is fine if somebody else is dealing with the lane. But like this mid lane is being shoved, this top lane is being shoved, and we're kind of just 5 heroes bottom. Which we do wind up getting this objective, but they're getting so much space on the map for this objective being taken. And so we kind of realized this. We're going to smoke across. We even scan the Spectre. And we kill the Spectre. Perfect. Love that. And do we find FJ here? This is really greedy from him. All right, we even find the sand. This guy, like, we're rolling. We're keeping the ball rolling. This line drawn from SBI is perfect. You want to push down here. You can start to pressure this tower. The only thing I will note, you know they're pressuring bottom. Somebody should go mid and shove in mid-wave in. Why do we need mid-wave in? Because you want 2 lanes in when you're going for an objective. General rule of thumb for pretty much every scenario. If you don't have 2 lanes in, somebody needs to address it, figure out who, probably Hoodwink here, and then connect to where the rest of your team is. You want 2 waves in because otherwise it feels really awkward on the map. the enemy feels more comfortable playing greedier. They get more resources than they might otherwise get. You get less information on the map as well. So 2 creep waves being in indicates where the enemy is playing, generally speaking. And if you're not entirely sure about why, you guys can actually go into the support chat in the Fluffy Hat League, and me and Ravi had a discussion over reading the map. A brief explanation would be said in treat. It goes a long way to treat creep waves like a ward, a moving ward in a way. They will give you vision of a certain area, and the enemies will generally feel inclined to push those creep waves in. So they are showing on a ward. If they're showing on a ward, you know that they're there. If they're not shoving a lane in, you know that they're not there, and they have to be somewhere else. So if you shove in mid here, and you shove in top here, nobody shows at this wave, or somebody maybe shows in this wave, nobody's showing up here, you know that they're all bottom. You know that they're probably in the triangle, you know they're probably down here. You very well know, you don't have vision of them, but you know from all the information you have where they are. And that's why generally keeping 2 out of 3 waves in is an ideal state. I'm being pinged again. So instead what happens is this Warlock is like, yeah, I can shove this lane in. We're going to have 5 heroes here. Once again, though, we have 5 heroes here. If we have 5 heroes in one area, what happens to the rest of the map? The enemy team can play it to their heart's content. We're not farming much, right? There's only so much that 5 heroes can farm in one area, which means that we are entirely dedicated to getting this objective, which is fine if we have committed the earlier resources to setting us up to do this. And if you want to think about it from the enemy's perspective, right? You're not showing some heroes, right? Maybe like I guess you're not showing your Oracle, you're not showing your Sand King, but nobody's defending this tower. Nobody's pushing out bot. Nobody's shoving bot, which means the enemies pretty much can guarantee that you have 5 heroes in this top lane. As a enemy carry or an enemy mid or an enemy core who has been pressured all game, this downtime is like sweet, sweet bliss. Them knowing there's 5 heroes up there is like, oh my gosh, I am so happy. There are 5 heroes up here. They can't kill us there. We'll play bottom for free. Oh, rejoice. Which is why this mid wave not being in is so crippling. And they prolong it even longer by glyphing. I honestly, like, maybe, like, this tower is, like, just not worth it at this point. In my honest opinion. Now, if they decide to walk into our area, that's a whole nother story, but, like, the enemy should be content with not fighting this. It's just so many resources committed. And eventually we just dive this Mars like psychos. And they do decide to fight us here because we dove. So, I mean, this is one way of going about it, perhaps. But notice how... Why do we feel forced to take this fight? Right? We feel forced to take this fight because we're not getting any other resources from the map. The enemy is farming more than us, which means that we are the ones that are desperate to do something. Thus leading to a less than ideal fight, perhaps. Now this fight location is pretty good, I have to say, right? This top area, we want to play top. We have vision up here. But it's not so good with how long we spent up here and the lack of resources acquired during the time we spent up here. So there's a happy medium between those two.
On the hunt for radiant forces.
And we kind of see, you know, despite us... Uh-oh. Yeah, we lose Yop here too. Oh, maybe not. We're dead, right? Oh my gosh, we're alive. Okay, well this is them. This is some Craigasm shit. You love to see it. So this is like a wet dream. They counter overextend. So we're just the happiest people in the whole world. And it kind of makes up for us not maybe getting the most farm on the map. Yep, I like that SBI is here. We've recognized that maybe having 5 top isn't maybe the greatest of plays. So it sets us back a little bit. But now we're going to have a hero shoving here. It does leave you slightly susceptible to them bringing numbers to this top area, which is definitely something to be concerned about, but they've just used all of their ultimates, so we don't really care that much. For the most part, I've noticed that our wave clear heroes haven't spent a lot of time clearing waves, which is something that should be considered. So, like a hero like Sand King and Necro, they have very natural wave clear abilities, but I feel like I haven't seen either of them solo shove a lane at any point in this game. These heroes have such significant impact in these kinds of games. Maybe not Necro, but a hero like Sand King can do this because he shoves the lane so fast and is so tanky and elusive that it makes it hard for the enemies to react in an appropriate amount of time to punish the Sand King. So I think in your downtime, you feel like you're obligated to fight with this Blink Dagger, but there's a lot of times where you could just, you know, walk bottom, shove 1 or 2 waves out, TP back to your team. Instead of going full pedal to the metal, we have to find fights. There's a very happy medium. And I see we're farming in this jungle camp. So I like that we have shoved top, we are shoving mid. It's a little awkward that this wave is allowed to be let through. But it's, you know, it's not really the end of the world. But once again, why does this feel awkward? Because we only have 1 lane in. And yeah, we feel strong, we want to force this objective, but we're on vision. We're showing 5 heroes on vision. And we should probably know to some extent they might have vision up here because we're in their triangle. This is probably the #1 spot that teams will ward. When in doubt, play your triangle kind of thing. So we're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's brute force this. But in reality, we really can't. We get the D ward, we smoke. Realizing that maybe us having 5 heroes mid isn't necessarily working. And we're going to shoo them out of this bottom area. Honestly, not that bad, right? Shooing them out of bottom and then running back towards mid is kind of one way of forcing confrontations or forcing the enemies to play a less than ideal part of the map. But once again, 2 lines are being shoved. We have not addressed top. We have not addressed the waves bottom. So now we are full on committing, which it works out because we get this pick. But if you don't get this pick, this feels horrible. So we're gonna get this tower. A lot of time. Notice how The gold lead was 3k before we started forcing this top tier 2. We've got a couple of okay exchanges, but it's been 4+ minutes, 5+ minutes, and the gold lead's gone up 1k. So while it's really good that you're getting these external objectives, the enemy off of these external objectives has just gotten so many more creep waves, so many more creep camps that it's almost entirely offsetting the tower gold that we've gotten. And they wind up fighting us again. This is really dumb from them, I think. Yeah, that's dumb. This would feel significantly worse if the enemy wasn't giving you these engagements. But they give it to you, so you take it. Nice execution there. You feel strong. TK, you just walk up and start hitting this. Okay, we want to tank for our Cardi, I guess. This is just not a thing. Number one way to throw a game is going high ground before you're ready. Look at how much farm is available on the map. You just want a giant team fight. They have no ultimates. Right? They are all respawning. They're all trapped in their base. What could happen on the map to pressure them more than going high ground here? Okay, maybe take a second to think about it. Looking at the current map state. I'm looking at this wave, I'm looking at this wave, I'm looking at all of these camps, I'm looking at this wave, all of these camps. There is so much map, there's so much farm on the map that we could just eat. We gobble that thing up with our cores. And by the time the enemy has regrouped with their ultimates, with their heroes, we could have farmed almost the entire map, shoved in all of their lanes, and then come back to exactly where we're standing with just significantly more farm. And so it looks like we kind of just back. We're going to shove bottom. I love that Necro is bottom. TK is going to go top. Perfect. This is awesome. And this is one of those scenarios where, right, we have forced the enemies into a desperation smoke of sorts. Right? We're forcing in bottom, we're forcing in top. As the heroes that aren't forcing those lanes in, you just walk back into your jungle. There's nothing more to be gained into their area. And we wind up taking a good fight. Actually, it winds up working out because the Riki breaks the smoke. So, I mean, this is about as ideal as it gets with the exception of this mid wave being let through. This mid-wave being let through is the only critique I have here. Everything else is so good. And we see the Spectre now in a ward. We can sprint at the Spectre because all of our lanes are in if we want to, or we can pressure top. We have so much map available to us. And it might still be a little early to fully commit to going high ground, so we just poke with the Cardi wave a little bit. And when we vibe, we say, okay, the enemies will come farm their triangle, but they're gonna have to have 5 heroes there. While that's happening, we're gonna take Rosh. Seems good with me. We take Rosh. We're shoving in mid. This is really excellent game. This is excellent here from SBI. You probably don't need 5 heroes here because you see them on the ward. Somebody could have been probably top, but it's pretty minor. Because notice how we had a 7k gold lead. While we were taking Rosh, they were farming the rest of the map. So make sure that when we're forcing... Rosh specifically is an objective that you want to commit as few numbers to it as possible. And it goes along the same thinking as to why Ursa soloing Rosh is such a powerful concept. The less heroes you bring to Rosh, the more you can have pushing lanes playing the map. The less comfortable the enemy is playing the playing the map as a whole. So, keeping that in mind, right? You don't want to undercommit to taking Roche because then it takes too long, but committing 5 heroes sometimes isn't fully necessary. But Yop is going to go up here. He has the Aegis. So keeping in mind, our Riki is our strong hero. He's the one with the Aegis. And we're going to get some nice deep wards down. TK is going to get bottom out. I really like this. We're going to have 3 lanes out. We're going to have 3 lanes out, which means that we can make literally any play on the map. We're going to find a free kill here. We're going to shove in mid. And this is where the map feels super, super closed for the enemies. Your map is wide open. Right, I'd say this is an excellent appropriation of resources at this exact moment. You shoved in mid, you shoved in bottom, you now take that. Oh, love to see it. Now we're going to hit this high ground a little bit. We actually wind up taking this because Yop is very strong. We get the purge. And we just do this. Why do we feel so comfortable doing this? We see the Spectre bottom. But this mid lane is in, our bottom wave is in. We know they either have to all be next to the Spectre or in their base, which we are completely content with. The only hero getting farm in this specific circumstance is the Spectre. Nobody else is farming. Where if we consider what was happening in the previous times that we were maybe doing stuff like this, we had one wave in, Spectre was farming, DK was farming, Mars was farming. Everybody on their enemy team was getting levels and experience and farm, and we were only getting a single tower as a trade-off. So this trade-off is significantly better. Now we're getting racks. We force the enemies into their base. Spectre's the only one farming. Let me watch the start of this fight. So they're going to haunt in, and they're going to find our Oracle, which is about as disastrous as you could possibly ask for. And fight winds up going poorly. I'd say this is just a positioning thing. I honestly think you're about as well set up to win this fight as you could be outside of positioning. So this is one of those things that you lose this fight and you're like, well, I should have been further back. It happens. You don't beat yourself up about it. And we're going to TP out. But, I mean, we got racks. Lost 3 heroes. They used all their ultimates. Right, our Riki didn't die. He lost Aegis, but he didn't die. So it's at this point that they've got double blinks on their heroes that we kind of need to start respecting their initiation potential. If they get the initiation on a hero and Oracle isn't there to save them, the fight looks really bad now because of just because of how our lineups are functioning. Whereas if they on the other side of the coin, right? If they initiate on somebody and Oracle is able to counter initiate on them, Oracle isn't the one that gets gone on and dies. You pretty much guarantee win the fight at that point, I'd say. So, with that in mind, we now need to figure out which heroes we need to place in front of engagements. So, what heroes should eat the spells at the start of a fight? Obvious answer is probably either Sand King or Necro, of which we kind of assume, but that generally means that the other heroes need to spend as much time off map as possible, with maybe the exception of Hoodwink, because you can kind of play side lanes as well. But the most dangerous part of the map is going to be the heroes that shove in the dangerous lanes. So mid could be a dangerous lane. Bottom is a dangerous lane. Top's not really that dangerous because we know the enemies are going to be in this area. And I really like... Well, I really I really hate. I don't. We're kind of at the point where Yop going in first seems really awkward because they're getting really tanky on their heroes. It's also pretty safe to assume they'll have sentries in most places. But this is just. I'd say this is a communication thing. This fight looks horrible already. If you win this fight, I'll eat my words. But you don't have Oracle or Hoodwink here. Your carry is getting on, and your Necro's not here either. Like, this is pretty much about as bad as a start of a fight as you could ask for. And maybe it winds up being okay because they don't fully commit, but we lose our Sand King. Perhaps more. Okay, FJ tries to TP. And this is just bleeding kills. So I pretty much just blame this on you guys as a team need to communicate, or you need to be aware of where the enemies will generally have vision and where they won't. I'd say Riki face checking stuff like that is probably the worst case scenario for that. So you just got to be a little bit more disciplined. All right, you've shoved in top, you've shoved in mid. Let the creep waves progress. And then let your Sand King kind of poke around here. Riki should never be the one going in first at this point. And we kind of just bleed kills here. And this seems like the beginning of the end, in a way. Because we have lost our momentum with momentum heroes. And that's really all it takes against... when you have maybe less conventional heroes, all it really takes is 1 or 2 fights that go less than ideally because your heroes require such specific circumstances to be good. Alright, so that was extremely long. Holy shit, that was 45 minutes. Let me take a quick look at the Dota buff for game 2 here. And this one seems to have just been a general laning loss kind of thing. Lost all their lanes, got snowballed. I will do a video on the second game, maybe later, probably tomorrow. Let's go with tomorrow for now. Somebody will have to maybe ping me to remind me to do it, but this is a lot of information to absorb. So... I'll let you guys kind of sink this in. Ask questions if you have them. If you want to talk about specific lane decisions and item decisions, I am always around in Discord, so don't hesitate to ask me. And if you get the chance, all of you, I strongly recommend you read the conversation me and Ravi had in the support channel of the Fluffy Hat Discord at like 4 a.m. about reading the map, reading the mini-map, and gathering and how it impacts the information and what information you can obtain from it. All right. That's that. Until next video, peace.